All right. Hey there. Welcome back to this Disruptive Spark. Today, we have a guest who is going to really blow your mind because here's one thing we know from our bankers and our accountants and our finance folks, whatever technical field you happen to be in, there's almost a universal issue, which is how do I get my people to understand more about when I speak to them about my services and products, and how do I actually get them to take my advice? So if you've ever struggled with this, then you're not alone. I think that is the number one question I hear in the groups that I'm in, and the clients that I work with, and the conferences that I go to, and the articles that I'm reading. You know, this is a real issue, and it's an issue because it's actually factoring into your loyalty scores. So when your clients don't understand what you're saying, they just stop asking. You know, you get the few that yell and scream, but for the most part, it just goes silent. And that means that you're not building your reputation. That means that the client isn't buying new products and services. And it certainly means that they're not referring you, which this is really the heart of business development in the professional services world. So I have been working really hard to find some very interesting people. And I'm going to introduce you to one of my friends coming on today. Meet Stina Borth. I want to make sure I get that right, of Keymakers. Just say a quick hello to everyone. Stina, welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Oh my gosh, it's so important. And as I was doing in the little bit of a lead up here, this frustration around, or the challenge, I should really say, around how do I get better, right, at helping my clients to take actions that are in their best interest. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing that you and I both believe in wholeheartedly is that it has more to do with internal mechanics, meaning, right, our nervous system, our heart rate, the chemicals that are released, and some other functional things in our body that are often misunderstood as character traits. Right. And if I were to say the first one that comes to mind when I think of this topic, it's the word lazy. I can't tell you how many times I hear that as a major objection on teams, in groups, right? They're like, so-and-so is lazy. So-and-so doesn't do enough. So-and-so, right? Do you experience this as well? Are you noticing this too?
Absolutely. And really what it is when we're using those terms, it's a lack of language and understanding that we can use to effectively communicate what's actually going on. Exactly. So when we're talking about that communication, that connection, that all goes right back to basic human needs of, like, let's throw in Maslow, right? We need safety in order to do that. We need that connection, communication, but we need to have a common language to do that. We also need to understand what's going on human behaviorally, like to be able to communicate. When we see these character flaws of lazy, there's probably something else going on. And really, honestly, the first step is facilitating that understanding for our clients, for our team members, for ourselves. So then it can be used as a tool to make a shift.
So true. And, you know, I think it's the most exciting time to be in our professions, which is the professions of helping other people to be successful, because there's so much research now that's being done. There's so much being uncovered that we're going to unpack for everybody today. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Stina. We're going to introduce a topic called neurodivergence, and I'm probably not even getting it right, which is why I needed to bring you in. But in a nutshell, it's really about the wiring. Right? The electrical system, and how things that look, right, like they're not understanding, they're not taking my advice. It could look in, like, if you're with your team, I'm working harder than someone else. It could look like nobody's motivated. I mean, if you're in the audience listening to us right now, if you've heard any of these things come out of your mouth, this episode is so vital, because I hope that we disrupt some thinking today. That's probably not the reason. That's just the only thing that we've been able to talk about, and it's the only thing that we've known. But what Stina is going to share with us today is the actual physical wiring within our minds, within our bodies, that produces some of these same results. And then more importantly, what can we do about it? So let me give you the floor. I'm going to bring you in full on into the screen, because I really want people to lean into what you're saying. And please explain some of these terms and just set the table for us to get started.
Yeah. So a lot of times when we have those terms of lazy, not motivated, it speaks to a need to manage and maintain our nervous system. And so that's what brings in neurodiversity. So neurodiversity is this term, it's an overarching term. And I'm probably going to pull out my whiteboard and just be
oh yes, please do.
greater about that. So what we have here, and I'm just going to do a little sketch. And I often do hand movements. So if you're watching this, you might want to do the hand movements, who's going to help you retain this information. But you have neurodiversity is this overarching term. And basically what it's saying is there's diversity, there's differences within our nervous system. So my nervous system is going to function, have different needs for maintenance than what yours will be, or someone that right next to me. So we're acknowledging that. That's that spectrum of neurodiversity. Then you have on the two polar ends, you have neurotypical, which honestly, it sounds like normal to me. And I tend to push back against, because that sounds like a setting on the dryer, but we have neurotypical and then neurodivergent. And neurodivergent is the other end of that spectrum. And it's talking about diagnosable labels, those that are saying that I have a recognizable difference in how my nervous system interacts with the world, how I take in information and how I output information is different than what we are identifying as neurotypical experience. And so on this end, we often have like autism, ADHD, OCD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, social anxieties, all of those differences in our nervous system are housed over here. Most of us are also in this spectrum. And we all have, well, I wouldn't say most, I'm going to make a statement. We are all in this spectrum. We all have a nervous system that needs maintenance, that needs care, and we need to pay attention to it in order to function, especially when we're using our cognitive abilities and our cognitive skills, so that we don't have a shutdown in our frontal lobe and we can't make decisions and we can't process information. And then the last term I always like to bring in is neuroinclusion. Neuroinclusion is just, it's the belief and it's the system of saying, I'm going to include this knowledge that there is a nervous system within me, that it is different than the person next to me. And there's diversity within our population, within my decisions, my actions, and on how I engage with others.
Okay, so that is a spectacular way to, I love the whiteboard. First of all, get rid of PowerPoint. Whiteboards are fabulously exciting and they're new stimulus for the brain. So they always attract attention. So little tip, but always whiteboards or other things that aren't PowerPoint related. And to your point, can we do it together? Like, I feel like when you get the visual, you're more likely to remember. So let's do it together.
We have neurodiversity.
Neurodiversity.
Yep.
You can do it this way.
Neurodivergent.
Neurodivergent.
And then neurotypical.
Neurotypical. And this is our range.
Yep. And then we have neuroinclusion.
And then we can include. Okay. Neuroinclusion. So neurodiversity, neurodiverse, and neurotypical, and then everything in between. In between. Oh, and then inclusion. Okay, so that really helps set the table for me. Thank you so much. I actually, being with Stina has been so informative for me because I don't have quote unquote a designation, right? Or a diagnosis. However, I'm fairly certain that I am one of those people that are absolutely on the spectrum in ways that I wouldn't have even thought. So I think this is a fun conversation for anyone watching to play along with us. We're going to list out some things that, based on Stina's research and what we know from science, is that these are hallmarks, right? Which means you don't have a diagnosis, but you are on that spectrum. And I think it's really important for people to be aware of that. And if you're following along, write it in the comments for us. Which ones were the ones that popped out for you that you had no idea fell into this family? So I'm going to give you one to start us off because this was the one I was like, oh my God, I do this all the time. But I'm a picker. So I work on my cuticles all the time, really when I'm not paying attention, like so bad sometimes that when I go to get my manicures, like they have to like literally do some work. And I've noticed it runs in my family. So I've seen my son, my, and some other people in my family that seem to have that same thing. So that was the one that stuck out for me. What was the one that you were surprised kind of fell in this category of being on this spectrum?
Well, the thing is that we're on this neurodiversity spectrum where all of us are riding it. We all need stimuli in order. And I like to call it the Goldilocks stimuli. Your body is always it's seeking homeostasis. Your brain is seeking that. You're trying to find that just right enough stimulus so that I can stay engaged and I can interact with the world, but I'm not overwhelmed, so I don't shut down. And so
is it fair to say that this is keeping me from shutting down? It's regulating me, like doing that? Yeah.
And you're doing it subconsciously. And a lot of us do that, the leg movement.
Yeah, that was another one, right? That continuous shaking of the leg.
Absolutely. And a lot of us do the finger bits. I do cheek chewing. That's another one. And I'm very open and I'm being vulnerable with you all, but with that, because this is one we don't often talk about. But what I have found is that it is something that I recognize is regulating. It's within my nervous system. That doesn't mean I don't have to manage it, so it doesn't become
a problem.
Right? Yeah. Just like if we bite our nails down.
Yeah, like it's one thing to be rubbing your fingers, but it's another thing to have them picked to the point where they're, again, like they're bleeding, like that. And it was something I never even like considered. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. The other thing that for me, I was pleasantly surprised to hear, because I have actually secretly berated myself for this for a very long time and experienced a lot of shame around it, is frequent spelling errors.
Oh yeah.
So I actually have someone on my team that does nothing but read my things, because they're generally spelled wrong, or words are missing, or like common grammar just doesn't stick in my brain. And I've always just assumed the worst of myself, right? So it's actually refreshing to realize that I'm not, it's not that I'm not smart or can't learn. I just probably process things in a way that my brain skips things. Is that fair to say?
Right. It's different. We all process information differently. And I think what's important to pull out of this point here is focus on the data. Take an objective approach. Take away that shame, blame, categorizing, labeling. That's not helpful.
Character assassinations. Yeah.
Right. Let's bring it back. It's just data that you recognize. This is what happened. I know for me, because of my diagnosis of ADHD, working memory, more than 1 to 3 steps, maybe I can hold. I need to write it down. This is just data that informs how I work and what I use to self-accommodate and support myself to function, to move forward, to get the job done, complete the task. So what you recognize is you are going to utilize your team member to go through your emails.
Yeah. And yes. So like, look, I'm actually super smart and I didn't even realize it, like that's the thing. Like, I think we're so savvy sometimes that we don't give ourselves enough credit for just how savvy we are. Cause we're constantly solving these things in ourselves that, if we were just able to find more information about, we wouldn't even have to feel bad about it. So I love that. So let's shift a little bit. I think it's clear, right? We know that we're dealing with clients that are on that neurodiversity spectrum. We are somewhere on that spectrum. And so it's really safe to say that on a regular basis, we're not properly understanding a lot of the cues. And we've already talked about it, right? So lazy could mean like when someone's staring at you with a blank face, a judgment would be they don't understand. But the reality could be they're processing.
Exactly. And sometimes there's a difference in the amount of time, the seconds that are needed, or how we present information. So if you see that and they're processing, it's completely valid to do a check-in. You can restate, say, I heard you say X, Y, Z, did I get you? Or you can say, what did you hear me say? What's the main takeaway? And if they can't reiterate it to you, if they can't communicate or write it down, communicate with you, that means you just shift into another medium. So if you provided it verbally, provide it visually, or provide it by acting it out, kind of like how we did that.
Like we did the acting of it out. I am a lunch aide at my kids' school. And I'm a former teacher. I'll always be a fifth grade teacher. I'm a former teacher from like 17 lives ago. But it's always been in me. And these past 2 years, I've just been a lunch aide. And I do this thing again, like you start to do things, you don't even realize the power behind them. But when I'm at lunch recess, I'm like, do you want to do this? Or do you, like, because they don't stop and think. Like at that point, they're not really processing. They're young. So I gave them a way to like do that. So I'll say on one hand, right? Should I do this? Is it gonna take my recess time away? And I give them a way to make a choice with my hands. And now they're all out there on the playground, running around, like doing this thing with their hands. But the point is, it stopped the like impulsive behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of just going right in, it like doing this gave them a second to think and process. So
and
is that
it's signaling a choice. So let's bring this, like, let's bridge this over to workplace adulthood. High stress, fast moving, got to make a decision and pivot quickly. Let's simplify it. This or this, this or this, this or this. So maybe when you're communicating with your client, or you're communicating with your team, and it's high stress, need to make a decision quickly, overwhelming information, you cut the words down and you give two choices at a time. And then you move on to the next two choices, the next two choices. That would be very supportive of the nervous system in bite size to facilitate. Because when you have, especially, I mean, I'm hearing the clients that you are working with, and I've worked with as well. There's a lot of jargon. It's high cognitive abilities. It's a high level of training, and a lot of times our clients that we're working with, they are not there, and all that is going to just shut them down. So we need to be the ones to translate.
And can I just say, and then it looks like they're not listening to me.
Right.
Like that's an easy conclusion to jump to. They don't take my advice, right? Like because it's not because they don't want to, right? It's that was something blocking the way. So honestly, if anyone, I would go back and rewind this episode and take verbatim some of the suggestions you just gave people around how to engage in conversation with your clients or for yourself. Like how many times have you gone to the doctor? How many times have you gone somewhere and they're saying something and you're like, I don't even know what's happening here. So if I heard you correctly, what I'm hearing you say I need to do, right? It's that going back and double checking, because that's going to clear up any of the miscommunication. Is that fair to say?
Exactly. Yep. And then I think the other piece that is essential when we're working with clients and working with ourselves, and maybe we're trying to address that laziness, the easiest way that when I've brought in and we're in this crisis situation, whether it's with a client or whether it's with a team, it's moving forward from that crisis. How do I get out of it? How do I complete this task? How do I move faster? I'm not making deadline. I have this client that's not moving on this decision, isn't completing this paperwork. I've asked them to do X, Y, Z. Sometimes you need to look at what is it that they know about their time awareness and their task completion, and how are they planned? Like, what is a reasonable deadline based on that and their nervous system? So that's really
gold. That's gold.
Yeah. And it's really easy and simple. Yep. And I feel like I come into these situations, and to me, I said, well, you do X, Y, Z, and then you get 3. That's it.
Oh my God. That's like my favorite line. You do X, Y, Z, and then you get 3. I love it. That's so good. So you're the X, Y, Z girl, right? Yeah. You make this easy, X, Y, Z. All right. So we're coming a little bit to the end, and I really want to get to something I think is probably the most exciting thing that I have learned from you, because our worlds are so similar. And a lot of the things that we do overlap so much, which is great, because then like you're doing something valuable. Sometimes I feel like, don't worry if other people are doing what you're doing. Like it means it's valuable. But you have such a unique stance around how to deal with time, which I think, like whether you're the leader trying to manage a team, whether you're an individual trying to manage your own time, like everybody is looking for the holy grail on time. And I'm going to tell you, I think you have it. Would you share with everybody a little bit your data and your research around time tasking, I think is what you call it?
Yep. So I call it the time awareness ratio, and time and task management combined with a weekly schedule design. And it's really, really simple. You facilitate for people or for yourself by identifying your time awareness ratio through charting. You say, I am going to do this type of task. I think it's going to take this amount of time. And then you actually observe it and record it. And then you find an average or a mean, and you use that for your planning of your weekly schedule design. And now what you're doing is, it's not, I feel like it's going to be this, or that judgment that goes in, I have this to-do list.
I should have been able to do this. I'm doing more work than him. Yeah. Like all those.
Use the numbers. Start gathering and using quantitative data, not qualitative, quantitative, to inform your work, inform how your team is working, how the expectations of your clients, of your teams, and creating something that it actually works for what your nervous system is in. So you're being mindful of the nervous system and what you need to get done. So you're finding that baseline through collecting quantitative data. It's just observation. You could even do intervals along the way. I have a really simple program and a training that it's really quick, and you use the tools, and it's actually really affordable. So,
oh my gosh. So you know what? That's a no-brainer to me. That's a no-brainer. I don't care in what capacity you want to use it. I would use this at home with my kid, like in their homework. It's like, I don't care what capacity you want to use this in, because it's the game changer, because the time and the stress and the miscommunication and the hurt feelings and the, you know, this is the central element involved in building a really robust client base. And you don't even know what you're dealing with. And this is how you're going to level set and do everything. So give me the name of it again. I want to make sure I get it right.
The time awareness ratio.
Time awareness ratio. And if somebody wanted to get that, could they find it on your website, or just find you? How would they find you?
They could find it. I like to individualize it for you, but they could find a template on the website. The best way is actually just look me up on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So, really.
And Stina Borth. Yep. And Keymaker is the company. Exactly. So again, I don't know what you were expecting in the audience today, but I'm going to tell you what, this is the reason you listen to podcasts, because people do the most amazing things. And this is how, you know, smaller companies like us that don't have a big national reach, you know, that we get fresh ideas into the workplace. So I'm so appreciative that you shared that with us today. I think that's such an amazing thing. I thought it might be fun as we're wrapping up and sending this one off, but paint some pictures for us. Like, what does neurodivergence look like in the workplace? And like, what might you see? And then are there any gadgets, doohickeys, things in the office that, you know, I always say, like, you know how they put like fluoride in the public water, like, because it's just good for your teeth. Like, I think we should do a lot more of that. Like, there should just be things we're doing without even needing to talk about them, because we just know they work. So give us a couple of those. Talk to us about what might we see? Mm-hmm. And then what are some things that just automatically reduce that?
Right. So I think the first and foremost, I always say to clients and companies, start asking questions of what folks know about themselves and the nervous system, what they know about how they work best. I need movement. So I know within my needs for my nervous system, my neurodiversity, I'm going to show you. Like, I'm using one of these.
See, I knew there were doohickeys we needed to know about. I knew there were.
It's great for the core, but it's also great for my brain.
So it gives you a stimulation. You need a stimulation that gives that to you.
Stimulation. I do a standing desk. So you want to have options. You want to have options for change and for individualization.
Oh, look, she's standing as we speak. Oh, that's powered and everything. Oh, that's sweet. I like that. Okay.
And then even think about temperature as a stimulus, noise, auditory stimulus is important. So sometimes, and visual. So sometimes those open spaces that became so popular for a bit are not great.
They're not so great.
Certain folks that are on a certain point of the spectrum of neurodiversity for productivity. And so when we're saying come into the office and work with us all, that's great for collaboration, but they're going to need the option to maybe isolate or to break down and take away some of the stimuli. So it might be visual. For me, it's auditory. I love those also.
Isolation isn't antisocial.
No.
And I hear a lot of people saying, I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert. personally, I don't really like either of those words. I think there's just how your body responds best given a situation. And sometimes your energy needs to be internal, and sometimes it needs to be external. And sometimes, so don't get caught up so much in the words and stuff, but just get really good at like listening to yourself. Like, you're a very smart person. You can really trust yourself. Is there a moment like was there something when you realized I needed to trust myself? Like, there was like a moment when you realized this is something else and I need to go find the solution. Does that pop anything to your mind?
What's really, my story is really interesting, and my discovery of my neurodivergence, because I was studying and working in the field, and it took a close person, my brother, coming to me and saying, "Hey, I just got a diagnosis. I think you should look at that." And it was really interesting because here, a lot of times it's right in front of us, but it's so normalized. We don't recognize that we can self-accommodate is one. And that's a lot of times, a lot of companies and a lot of professionals don't realize. You're not asking for more. You're informing and sharing information in collaboration, of facilitating a team in a workplace that can be that next level, can have that innovation, but it doesn't work if you don't share and you don't speak of it and you don't become aware. The most successful leaders and teams it starts with awareness, and organizational awareness can't be possible without team awareness, and team awareness isn't possible without leadership.
Self-awareness.
Right.
And, I feel like I often hear, thank you for sharing that, by the way. I think that was really powerful for people to hear and to understand. I have something similar. I was working, in my line of work, I've worked with a lot of people to create their content. And this was years and years and years ago. And I was working with this really great leadership consultant. And I'm reading over all these models, and I'm like, I do every one of these things. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I had no idea. So I really resonate with this idea of self-awareness. And it was that moment that when I realized in myself that I could start to see it in others. And I became tolerant. I became less judgmental. I became more inquisitive. I became more curious. And as I built those skills, everything shifted for me, from my work life to my personal life to the amount I call them the money makers, right? If you really want to become known, if you really want to make the most money, it's not about what you do and all your skills, but it's the awareness of, how does it play out for myself? How is it perceived by others? And then what am I willing to do to make, simple adjustments? So I love that you've already talked about, I have a desk that goes up and goes down. I put a thing, on my chair, like that. People want to say they're powerless. You're not. Mm-hmm. You are 100% in charge of yourself.
Right.
I'm going to give you the last word as we're wrapping up today. If there's anything else you could tell everyone about this neurodiversity concept, what would it be? Send us off.
It would be, get curious, ask questions, ask the folks around you for what their experience is, and become a key maker to open that door that's locked.
Open the door.
Most of the time, have the key.
I'm going to give your plug. I'm going to give your strategy one more, because I think that's a key that's a key maker. That's a place to start to make sense of things that are really feel complex, to bring it down to the simplest place. Give us the name of it again.
So the time awareness ratio.
Time awareness ratio. I love it. Well, Stina, you are a dynamo. I knew that you had something extremely valuable to share, and I am super happy to extend your voice in this crazy space of customer service and business development and team building and like all these things that we're constantly trying to solve for. You gave us a real strategy, and I hope people really take advantage of it. So thank you. I know we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.